We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Revis gives him like 5 yards of cushion from the 5, and Stevie, for probably the first time the entire game, does not do any herky-jerky. He goes on a beeline, straight down, slant, beats Revis to the point, catch, touchdown. Just beautiful, man.
We're throwing back to an episode I did a few years ago with Ian Hartitz, now with Fantasy Life. Fun matchup between the Bills and the Jets. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Stevie Johnson going full YOLO against Darrelle Revis in peak form with the Jets. Stevie wins some, Darrelle Revis does his thing too, for a rewind on Remember That Game, the show about sporting events that take you on a journey and maybe chart the path of the zeitgeist. I'm your host, Thomas Emerick. Enjoy the show.
Oh, man, thanks for having me on the show. I've been waiting a long time to talk up my guy, Stevie freaking Johnson. Just one of those wide receivers. I mean, all right, did this guy have the longest and best career? No. Will he be on any all-decade team from the last 10 years? No. But you look at what he did from 2010 to 2012, 1000, 10 tutties, 7 tutties, 6 tutties, and the manner of which he went about doing it, man, was just so much fun to watch. Just, I love seeing you guys like Dez Bryant, Calvin Johnson just take over the game with their God-given gifts. Other guys just, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, they run past everyone. But it takes a special guy like Stevie Johnson, who's, 6'2", 200 pounds, dripping wet, probably never ran, a sub 4.5 40, even on the best day of his life. Takes a special kind of guy for him to trip up the best cornerback in the league of the era, Darrelle Revis, consistently, to give the best cornerback of the era all sorts of problems, and to be just a complete swagger hound the whole way while doing it, man. I love me some Stevie Johnson.
Fitzpatrick, no fucks given. First pass, Stevie Johnson at Darrelle Revis. The first one does not go nearly as well. It's behind Stevie Johnson, nearly picked off by Revis, but they keep going at him in the first half. And this is at a time where throwing at Darrelle Revis would get you a lower quarterback rating than if you just threw the ball at the ground every play. In this game, Stevie Johnson would put up more yards on Darrelle Revis than he would give up overall in a game over his final 31 games with the Jets. And Stevie Johnson did it all by himself here. Fitzpatrick involved in this. And did it seem like the same old guy 10 years earlier, or did you see a different Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Dude, that's what's kind of funny right now. I mean, seeing this, I believe Chan Gailey was still the guy. Yep. With the okay, Chan Gailey was there. We're getting the Gailey-Fitzpatrick partnership back in Miami this year, so it was a little bit fun to see what number one wide receiver can do in this Gailey offense. CC Devontae Parker, but man, these, like you said, the first half. What was so crazy about rewatching it was, I mean, I knew the routes were there. I've gone back and looked at these before, but I didn't realize until I'd seen the broadcast that Stevie hadn't had a single reception in the first half in any of the previous 3 weeks. He had 4 on Revis through freaking like 20 minutes of the game. And yeah, like you said, first one, Revis won, knocked the ball away. But after that, dude, it was just one gorgeous release after another. And, just really, really focusing on Stevie's routes instead of just kind of following the ball like, you will most games. It was just wild to see him, even on run plays, almost spooking Revis, getting him guessing, never seen Revis look so uncomfortable out there. And, credit to Fitzpatrick for being, the YOLO ball quarterback that's not afraid to consistently attack the best corner. I think it was like in the second half where Rich Gannon, I forget the other guy on the game, but one of them was like, yeah, it's wild to say this, but it seems like Fitzpatrick is, picking on Darrelle Revis.
Didn't really remember this being a team. I don't know how many games they did together, but Marv Albert and Rich Gannon It was an interesting combo. You got the guy who brought you in Fuego in the 90s NBA Finals, and Rich Gannon, who I thought did a really great job of illustrating some issues on the other end of the field, where the guy gets the snap, he throws the passes that nearly get undercut, and then he gets the boos from Jets fans. That's Mark Sanchez. And I mean, Gannon, maybe the greatest at anticipation and throws over the middle. Mark Sanchez seemed to love the throws over the middle, but they did not love him.
Yeah, not so much, man. Yeah, credit to those announcers for it took them until I think 10:50 in the second quarter before they mentioned Fitzpatrick went to Harvard, so they were able to lay off that during a time where everyone loved to bring it up. And then Shannon Sharp doing all the scoring updates throughout the game was a lot of fun too. So enjoyed that one. But yeah, man, dude, the thing with Mark Sanchez, like, okay, obviously he was a bad quarterback and stuff, but he did make a couple throws in this game and seemingly every game where you're like, wow, like, okay, I do see why he was a top 10 quarterback pick once upon a time. Unfortunately, few and far between, and I don't think he always made the best decisions with it. But this Jets offense, man, was like not good at all, but they just had like these fun throwback players everywhere. But yeah, I guess that's going to happen when you watch a game from 2011. But Sean Green, I mean, LaDainian Tomlinson was out, but we had Joe McKnight, getting some run as a kick returner and stuff. Brad Smith was on the Bills after being on the Jets before. Like, that was a wild revenge game going on. He had a hell of a touchdown over Cromartie at one point. But yeah, I mean, Sanchez was out there throwing to Santonio Holmes, who was like another Stevie Johnson-esque underrated guy from the past decade or two. And also, like, I never put together that the game Stevie does the Plaxico Burress gun celebration, Plaxico was on the other sideline the entire time. So it makes a little more sense once you put that together.
The audacity of Stevie Johnson. He hasn't had a first half catch in a few games. He hasn't had a touchdown in a few games. Apparently, after the season was revealed, he had like a torn groin. The announcer was talking about sprained AC joint. And after doing nothing the previous few games, the Bills are on a 3-game losing streak. Johnson scores on Revis. He's like, yeah, I'm going to show out now. I have a couple things ready in case I score on Revis. Does the fake shooting of his leg, which some of the production crew freaked out pretty quickly, understandably. At one point, you see one of the cameras, I guess they couldn't figure out where to cut, so they pan really quick to some random part in the crowd and do a quick zoom out, which was nauseating. But I mean, Stevie Johnson brought the fire. So what you gonna do? And then right after that, then doing the Santonio Holmes Jet touchdown celebration.
Oh, he did do that. You're right. I was wondering why he was running out with his arms outstretched. I didn't realize he was mocking both of the dudes. That's even better.
Game just started. He's already mocking both the other team's top receivers, who each of them have Super Bowl winning touchdown catches. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. I just torched Revis, so I'm going to torch these guys too.
It's kind of out of character for him too. Like, he's not this guy that like every ball he catches, he's flexing or doing a first down pump. I mean, once he got going against Revis, okay, you could see him getting his swagger back a little bit, but I felt like it was just a little bit random. This wasn't like Chad Johnson or Terrell Owens, who was just always doing some sort of celebration. I mean, for it to come to Stevie made it that much better. Dude, the touchdown itself, though, was awesome because literally, again, this whole game, they're showing you the wide receiver cornerback, like, specific shot on Revis and Stevie. And Stevie is just taking, like, 6 steps, faking outside, faking deep, and then cutting inside, getting all sorts of separation, these herky-jerky routes that we love from Stevie. But the touchdown was actually so great because Revis gives him, like, 5 yards of cushion from the 5, and Stevie, for probably the first time the entire game, does not do any herky-jerky. He goes on a beeline, straight down, slant, beats Revis to the point, catch, touchdown. Just beautiful, man. Like, and again, I was so impressed. Just never takes a snap off. Even when it's a run the other side of the field, Stevie's setting up some release for a move like that.
You just see that replay in a vacuum. You're like, how is it that easy to beat Revis? But then you see all the other routes Stevie was running against Revis and how he set him up with so much weird shit that suddenly it makes sense in that context that he could get that cushion off the line and that hesitation from Revis on the touchdown, puts the Bills up 14-7 in the second quarter. And Stevie Johnson, as far as touchdown celebrations, it's not like a weekly thing like it was with Terrell Owens or Chad Johnson, who everyone remembers as the gold standard bearers, and understandably. But Stevie Johnson had a short Gale Sayers-esque run as far as celebrations go. And at one point, I guess there's something about Terrell Owens and Chad Johnson being the Batman and Robin of touchdown celebrations. So Stevie Johnson pulls up his jersey, says, "Why so serious?" Because he's now considering himself the Joker to their Batman and Robin. There was also no real comp for Stevie Johnson in the NFL at that time. 7th rounder out of Kentucky who's giving Darrelle Revis and then later Richard Sherman issues. Is there any similar comp today? I know Devontae Adams and Keenan Allen were a little bit of a different mold coming out. Is there anyone close to Stevie?
Maybe Keenan Allen a little bit because, they actually did end up playing together. And I think you see in some of Keenan's routes where he is so patient off the line, the amount of separation he gets. I think there's a lot of Stevie to Keenan Allen's game. I think Keenan's probably out, especially at this point in his career. If Keenan could put together a couple more big seasons, we're going to see, him continue to put up numbers that probably Stevie's will pale in comparison to him at some point or another. But just in terms of the top corner thing, you can look at Devontae Parker, even Corey Davis, if he kind of gets some things going, because for some reason, those have been the two guys to give Stephon Gilmore the most trouble over the last few seasons. So maybe if Corey Davis goes to his second team and starts making things happen, but both those dudes are, winning more on physical traits than anything. So I would say Keenan Allen, just in terms of the way they play, best modern day comp for Stevie.
Had a good year in 2010, but it was so shocking, much like the Corey Davis, Stephon Gilmore game, because Johnson hadn't been playing well recently. Part of that was Fitzpatrick had 2 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and 3 horrendous losses in the past 3 after the Bills had started the season 3-0. A part of it was, after the season it came out, Johnson was playing through a lot of injuries. No one sees this coming from Stevie Johnson. I mean, if it was, we were, putting out DraftKings advice at the time, Stevie Johnson's probably going sub 5K despite being the Bills' best receiver because he's going against Revis, and we're probably still not even entertaining the idea of a contrarian play there.
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't have been touching this, man. I mean, look, to be fair, it's not like Stevie just went off for 200 here. I mean, let's see, it was 8 catches, 75 yards, 1 tutty. Could have been a lot more though, man, potentially. I mean, I think every single one of his catches, the longest one was probably 17 yards on a comeback. Mostly was just, creating insane amount of separation on slants. You did start to see all right, fun parts in the second half. First snap of the second half, they're talking Stevie Revis, see what adjustments. First snap, they get another 8 yards on Revis, ridiculous. And you actually started to see them start to send some underneath help to try to deal with the slant and, even over the top a little bit at times, which was rare for Revis. Truly Revis Island. You never saw cornerbacks just shadow and not get the help the same way he did. That's why you see him kind of barking on Twitter about Sherman and some of these other guys even nowadays. So going later in the second half, though, man, the first seemingly incompletion that's been targeting Stevie since the first throw of the game. Great coverage by Revis. He kind of forced Stevie off the field almost into the sideline. But Stevie got 1 foot down and still caught this thing one-handed against his helmet. Even when it was an incompletion, he was still almost making Revis look bad. So, but man, what was nuts for me, I get to the end of the game, and unfortunately my Game Pass cuts off at 2 minutes, so I watched the rest.
Mine did too.
Yeah, that was weird. So I watched the rest, all 22. Man, what happened on that post that seemingly hit Stevie right in the hands there? He looked kind of confused. I know there's an offsides penalty, but dude could have capped his game off with a 30-yard touchdown where he had, Revis twisted like a pretzel.
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, just how close we were to Johnson actually doubling his receiving numbers, potentially catching a game-winning 60-yard touchdown. And that was such an odd play. He had 5 yards of separation on Revis. Did he actually beat Revis that bad, or was there supposed to be some sort of pass off because it was under a minute left? That was bizarre.
I think he twisted him, man. It looks like he faked out and then came back in on it. So it was wild. And then you saw Stevie, unfortunately he's really well known for that drop he had against the Steelers. I believe a few years later where he should have won the game in overtime. But that one, he was devastated. He knew this one I wish I could have heard the commentary because maybe there was something I was missing on the all 22, but he seemed kind of confused when it happened. So I don't know, man. It was good to see Fitzpatrick go back to Stevie 3 times in the final 4 plays, a little high on the last play of the game. But yeah, man, dominating, the most dominant 875-1 line you've ever seen. That really could have been so much more.
That's right. The play after the drop, he actually has Stevie Johnson wide open in the end zone, just throws it behind him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was behind him. He got open on all three of them pretty much. The last one would have had been a perfect throw. But, yeah, he breaks open like late on the second to last one, and Fitz just puts it behind him. What could have been?
Yeah, the most amazing 75-yard receiving performance I can remember. Apparently this era with Chan Gailey, I think, would end a little sourly. So there's another celebration Stevie Johnson did, and he lifted his jersey to reveal that Happy New Year was written on his undershirt. Oh, pretty innocuous. He gets a 15-yard penalty, and Chan Gailey benches him for the rest of the game, ending his season.
Unreal, man. Like, really, that's the thing where you get upset about? Come on, people.
Steve Johnson, another receiver, much like Chad Johnson, Ochocinco, and Terrell Owens, would be far more lauded and allowed to fly free when it comes to touchdown celebrations. In today's NFL, that would fit in perfectly. And then maybe he was thinking about his next celebration as he caught that as he dropped that pass ahead of Revis. He could have potentially gone the distance there for the game-winning score. I tend to think maybe he was just thinking about the ridiculous move he just put on Darrelle Revis, how he just liquidated the greatest cornerback in the game, and then he's so wide open, he has too much time to think about that. That's got to be the only way, right?
I think so, man. You do see like the receivers drop the easy ones after coming up with all kinds of crazy catches. There's just always been such a smoothness to Stevie's game in general. So I don't know, even when he dropped the ball, even when he drops a perfect pass, like I'm willing to kind of hear his side of the story and wonder like what could have gone wrong, even though it seems pretty clear that, should have been an easy pitch and catch. But fun game, man. Santonio Holmes ended up getting the game winning touchdown with a nice toe drag swag there. Pretty bad game from Sanchez overall, but got him. It was funny to see Plaxico Burress score a touchdown in this game as well, but then show some restraint. Like, come on, man. After Stevie shows you up like that, I feel like he should have, mocked him somehow, or at least said something about it afterwards. Maybe he did.
Plaxico, yeah, he scored, it felt like minutes after Stevie mocked him getting shot in the upper leg by himself. And Plaxico just comes out, does a bow to the crowd, trying to move past it any way he can. The less they're talking about that in the media, the happier he is. But Mark Sanchez, as you mentioned, had a poor game there. Both this season and in 2012, he would rank near the very bottom in PFF quarterback grading. This coming off of 2 straight seasons where he put together enough in the playoffs to help them get to a conference championship game, including once in Indy where Sanchez led a game-winning drive to beat Peyton Manning in the playoffs, which is one of the crazier things in history. So this is a real inflection point for Mark Sanchez, though. I mean, they've been to 2 straight AFC titles, but he's getting booed every time he throws a bad pass. Sometimes just him coming on the field is getting boos. They had just spent 10 days stewing on a Thursday night loss to the Broncos that ended with Tim Tebow running in a 20-yard touchdown in the closing seconds. So this is a salty fan base here. Did it seem like the Sanchez era was just on its way out the door, or did it seem like it was still potentially salvageable at that point?
I'm just laughing at his final stat line from this game. 17 of 35, 180 yards, but 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. One of the worst 4 touchdown, 1 pick games you'll see. Yeah, it was wild, man. Just hearing him talk about Sanchez, like even before the game started, and they're like, yeah, it just seems like he's lost his confidence. No one trusted the dude. And as you said, I mean, in 2009, as a freaking rookie, the dude makes it to the AFC Championship and was making some incredible throws early on in that game before Manning and company pulls away. The next year he beats Brady and Manning. Now, okay, he wasn't asked to carry the entire team in those games, so maybe that's where the confidence drop off happened. But it was startling kind of how quickly it happened, because nothing from his first 2 years in the league would kind of indicate that he couldn't at least be an above average quarterback. To see him flame out that quickly and really never get a hold again. I mean, this was a guy that couldn't even, I guess, in Philly in 2014, he got 8 starts, but that was kind of because of some injuries going around. I mean, I would have at least expected him to kind of get a second start somewhere else, get a change of scenery, get a chance to start. But, came and went pretty quickly. Good for him for picking up, a good half decade's worth of checks as a backup after kind of the prime starting days were over. But yeah, I, expected Sanchez to be a little bit more than he ended up being based on those first couple of years for sure.
They kept talking about how Dustin Keller was his security blanket and his most targeted player. PFF had him a middling tight end as far as receiving grade, just below Jermaine Gresham. So if Jermaine Gresham is your most targeted player, your pass offense is probably already in trouble. Do you think it hastened his decline that Rex Ryan, they keep saying, hey, all week, Rex Ryan has been telling Brian Schottenheimer they got to run the ball. So, going in, that's going to be a handy, leave you strapped a little bit. And then the top two receivers, Plax and Santonio Holmes, great careers. But after this season, neither really makes any noise, potentially on their way out. There was one third down where Sanchez is throwing it out to Holmes to move the sticks. And then Holmes turns upfield to run the wheel. Punt, he and Holmes were not on the same page anymore, and Holmes doesn't really stick anywhere else afterwards. Do you feel like the weapons around Sanchez hastened his eventual exit in New York?
Yeah, it's just kind of unfortunate, man. You look at Santonio Holmes' career, he goes from catching the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl and, October 2008, oh my gosh, possession of marijuana. And that's what, ends up being the thing that kind of gets him done with the Steelers, or at least led to it. I mean, there were, other things going on with him as well. But, I think we all know, the kind of elephant in the room when you talk about off the field issues with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's being a member of that franchise for over a decade and a half. So, unfortunate to see Santonio but that's life. Your franchise quarterback's going to get more chances to, be a model citizen than your wide receiver, unfortunately. So yeah, Santonio, I've been a Columbus, Ohio guy my whole life. So, I've always held Santonio especially close to heart. It was fun seeing him make a few big plays. This game had a reverse for a big chunk, but yeah, you said it, man. It was wild looking at these just kind of career stat lines throughout this game to see kind of what these guys did afterwards. And Santonio 8 scores that year, same at Plaxico, but yeah, neither guy could even really get on the field much after that. Stevie still had himself another good year or two before kind of injuries started to give him issues as well. But yeah, man, as you were kind of saying in the intro, it's a game, just a small snapshot of the game itself. But, once you kind of dive into it a little more, it is a little bit of an end of an era from some of those really dominant receivers from kind of the end of the 2000s.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Yeah, and the beginning and end of an era for Brad Smith, who scores his first touchdown since 2007 in this game. The announcers talk about how, he's brought over to run some Wildcat, but it's 2011 and the Wildcat's already over. So they're trying to figure out what to do with him, and makes a pretty spectacular catch. Fitzpatrick in 2011 was already loving that back shoulder fade. This one was well underthrown, and Brad Smith tips it over Antonio Cromartie for a touchdown, and what the announcers lauded as the 4 longest arms you could possibly have do battle in the NFL.
Yeah, man, it was fun seeing Brad Smith out there. He was like the cool version of Taysom Hill, pretty much playing, running back, receiver, and he could also throw the ball. I mean, he was a lot of fun at Missouri when he was just their full-time QB, making a bunch of plays. And he never really even got a chance to be an NFL QB. I don't even know if he was like lobbying for that much, but we did see him over the years. I think more so with the Jets than the Bills actually get chances to throw the ball. But he was out there returning kicks too. I also laughed at the note about, the 4 longest arms in the league were involved in that play. But what a just ridiculous play for him. I'm not really sure what had to happen for Brad Smith to be the franchise's wide receiver 2. It seemed like that kind of weird year around this time when week 1 came around, Devin Hester was I guess it would have been it was around this time when Devin Hester was the Bears legit wide receiver 1 for a season. Something had to go wrong for this to happen. But Brad Smith has just an exactly what you want in your wide receiver 4, a versatile dude that can do a lot, fun trick plays, and also play the position in a pinch. I think he was probably being asked to do a little bit too much in that situation, but that guy was a lot of fun back in the day.
And that touchdown brings it to 21-21, a really weird game that has stretches of horrendous offense, but also stretches of exhilarating back and forth. And it takes us into a tied fourth quarter. Yeah, as you mentioned, Santonio Holmes eventually gets the go-ahead touchdown that holds with a minute left. Kind of the same part of the end zone where he caught that one from Big Ben in the Super Bowl. Shades of that. Sanchez did have an odd knack for going from terrible play to extremely clutch play. Sometimes, whether it's the end of 2009, 2010, struggling before just turning it on enough in the playoffs, and sometimes just drive to drive. That was an answer drive Sanchez had there, down 24-21, leads the go-ahead drive, hits Holmes. Fitzpatrick's able to get the ball back, does put throws in place for Stevie Johnson there. Fitzpatrick also had some other throws that game. I think he came away as PFF's highest graded offensive player that game. Was hitting that back shoulder. Actually had one to Brad Smith that he didn't come away with, but 4 years later in MetLife, Decker and Marshall would be coming away with those back shoulders regularly. Do you think when Fitzpatrick was on his game in 2011, that's maybe the best QB play the Bills got that decade?
Oh, wow. Shots fired at Mr. Josh Allen, I see.
I know you're a Josh guy, yeah.
Nah, I think it was just still so turnover heavy. I mean, it was fun to watch for sure, but you look at those Bills years. I mean, that season, Fitzpatrick had 24 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. I mean, he was just – I don't think we weren't even necessarily getting the same, big booms we've seen in recent years from him. It was more of a moderate boom or more likely bust player at that point. I think Tyrod Taylor's 2015, 2016 seasons. I was looking at some team-wide yards before contact stuff because I think the idea that you have this Russian quarterback opening up the rest of your run game really does hold true, and we've seen that where the top 4 offenses in yards before contact over the last half decade have been the 2019 Cardinals with Kyler, 2019 Ravens with Lamar, and then 2015 and 2016 Bills with Tyrod Taylor. So I'm excited to see what he can do with the Chargers this year. I mean, those Bills offenses were legit. I know they didn't make a ton of noise, and Tyrod has his issues, but he was a guy that was able to go out there and lead them to consistent success. Unfortunately, at that point, Fitzpatrick was, kind of leading them to consistent 6-10 records. It wasn't all his fault. That defense wasn't all that dominant. And, other than Stevie, again, he had Brad Smith as number 2 receiver. That shouldn't have been happening. So now I would probably put Fitzpatrick number 3 on the all-decade Bills team, unfortunately, behind Tyrod 1, Josh Allen 2 for now.
Oh, yeah. And let me clarify. I would take 2020 Josh Allen over 2011 Fitzpatrick. I think Tyrod had the best seasons of a Bill quarterback last decade.
Yep.
I wonder if Fitzpatrick's peak play, where the 3 games prior to this, he was maybe the worst. I mean, he was above Nathan Peterman and not much else in the 3 games prior to this Jets-Bills game. But his play in this peak play in this Jets-Bills game gives a fight to anyone else's single game peak play.
That's fair. I mean, when Josh Allen still isn't thrown for 275 yards in a game, it's hard to battle too much with that. So yeah, now when Fitzpatrick is on, man, he is on. There's something about living your whole quarterback career as this YOLO ball artist, and he has done it, for decades now, and it's been fantastic the whole way to watch.
And do you think there's similarities to Fitzpatrick in 2019, where he comes in for the Dolphins behind a shambolic offensive line, really only has a decent enough tight end and really one go-to receiver, makes it work, flashes of Fitz magic as well. I mean, maybe a little bit of a premonition of 2019 Fitzpatrick here in MetLife in 2011.
A little bit, man. He actually did get some other chances to, start and with other teams after this. It's just wild the amount of teams this dude has played on throughout his career as it is. But even after, this season. He goes on, starts 9 games for the Titans in 2013, 12 games for the Texans in 2014. He was the Jets starter for 2 seasons. He kind of came into Tampa as the backup and then ended up doing his thing when Jameis was either hurt or ineffective or suspended or wherever it happened to be for balling out last year, man. Definitely saw signs of things to come, with that just boomer bust style that he's had. So I hear you there. I think the potential 2020 version of Fitzpatrick could be Gardner Minshew, man.
Ooh.
Just, entertaining, fantasy friendly, gunslinger, D-gaff, ball thrower, and, probably on a bad team. So it's too bad, we never got to see like playoff Fitzpatrick out there or anything. I mean, the fact that 10-6 Jets team still didn't qualify for the playoffs was certainly insane and unfortunate.
Yeah, and he'd be robbed of that by Rex Ryan.
Yep.
Much like he's robbed of a victory in this game. This Ryan Jets defense still keeping them afloat, not as great as they were in 2010, 2009, but still a top 5 total defense. Still got Revis and Cromartie. I mean, those two paired with Rex Ryan, is that the best kind of 1-2 combo in a scheme that you can remember over that past decade?
Yeah, Chargers had some, when Verrett was on top of his game, him and Hayward were pretty nasty. Some of those Broncos teams, but just in terms of Cromartie and Revis consistently being asked to, track the number 1 guys on the other side of the field and, do a really good job doing it. I mean, Cromartie, those were probably definitely, that's a good way of saying it. I would say those were the best years of his career, and this was a guy that played good 10 seasons there. So, Revis, when he got the number 1, and then I think Cromartie at his peak was probably anyone's idea of at least a top 10 guy. Whole lot of problems for them. And, just seeing throughout the game, it was interesting because they didn't really move Stevie into the slot. I mean, they were not concerned about this matchup. It's not like they were actively trying to get him to avoid Revis. There was like only 1 or 2 snaps where you saw anyone other than Revis on Stevie, but it goes hand in hand where Cromartie is going to be taking the other guys. So fun times where they kind of realize mid-game that they got to change things up. I remember it might have been the year after, but it was week 1, Jets Cowboys, and Dez goes out there like touchdown on Cromartie, big play on a slant, and you just see Revis like the next drive, like just now. Come on, Cromartie, it's my turn. I'm guarding Dez now. So little things like that. I mean, defenses nowadays, the only really corners you see truly tracking all over the field are Stephon Gilmore, Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, and Tre'Davious White, except for the slot. So you just don't really see cornerbacks being asked to do that as much anymore. You got to give them more respect, I think, than just the cover 3 artists. They're all great players, and you can't penalize guys like Sherman, some of those Broncos defenses where they weren't asked to travel all over the field. They didn't have to, and they were great defenses anyways. Like, doesn't matter. It's team success overall. But the fact Revis and Cromartie could do what they did and what they were being asked to do was very hard compared to the normal cornerback's responsibility. Yeah, I'd say they need to be minimum top 3 of any top cornerback duo list of the past decade.
Yeah, and Stevie Johnson still got it done. Brad Smith got one on Antonio Cromartie. This was shocking to me. Apparently, Stevie Johnson is the only Bills wide receiver to have back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Andre Reed, apparently, his were spaced out. Even though it was a short spurt, was Stevie's run with the Bills the best of a receiver the past decade? I mean, maybe you got Sammy Watkins and Robert Woods in there, but does Stevie Johnson stand above the group?
Oh, absolutely. I think he should definitely be that guy. I mean, look, Watkins had his fun games and all that. And I mean, I loved Smokey's 2019 season with 1,000, but he's not going to be able to break that with just 1 year. Nah, Stevie was the Bills, man. He was that early 2010s Bills offense. And I don't think, anyone else they've had over these past 2 decades can touch that. I'm sure, in their early 90s heyday, maybe they have someone to battle with Stevie in terms of franchise records and things of that nature. But no, in terms of early 2010s, I mean, Stevie was that guy, and he was great at being that guy.
This has been another episode of Remember That Game. Please rate, review, subscribe, and check out more episodes.